Okay, well, I am not going to waste anybody's time. I know everybody has, um, just a limited amount, but I want to introduce you. Some of you know Beth, some of you do not. This is Beth Francesco. She was at UT Arlington for how many years?
10 years.
10 years, and she is well known in TIPA. She went to TIPA as a student and was just a killer advisor. And she has now been at the National Press Club Journalism Institute for 5 years?
6.5. It's
Six
crazy.
and a half
I
years.
can't, it's flown by. I feel like just yesterday I was among all of you doing the important work of working with student journalists. So
Mhm.
it's flown
Well, we
by.
appreciate everything you've done. And what I told Beth is a lot of us are feeling the crunch of finances. I've heard this from several advisors, and where they're worried that they won't be able to send students to TIPA because of that financial situation. So I asked Beth, she is the great person to ask to come in and talk about fundraising. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Beth. And then we want to make sure that there's time for Q&A because, as Beth said, a lot of different campuses face a lot of specific issues. So I will let you take it away, Beth.
Thanks so much. And I'm so glad to be here. And I understand how incredibly, insanely busy this is. So that the fact that you've taken the time to be here this afternoon means a lot to me. So I want to make the most of your time while we have this hour together. I'm also happy to hang out afterward to answer any specific questions, but we'll just dive right in. As Julie mentioned, I spent a long time working with student media, especially in Texas. So I really understand how each campus is very different. The funding models are different. The challenges in working with administration and finding new money, very different everywhere. So I've tried to come up with a presentation that will kind of cover the basics or essentials, I should say. But I understand too that some of the things that I'm suggesting you try may not be applicable on your campus. So bear with me. And just to put a little bit of context to what I do now as executive director at the Journalism Institute at the National Press Club, in addition to kind of the day-to-day and all of the different hats, many of many of which student media advising prepared me for. What it didn't prepare me for was the fundraising aspect. And as ED, I am responsible for raising about $1 million a year, which sounds like a crazy amount of money, and it is, and the pressure is real. And right now, philanthropy is difficult. I mean, we're feeling the crunch across the board. And where philanthropy is really thriving right now is actually at the local level. So some of what we're going to be talking about is how you can tap your community, tap your alumni bases, but really thinking about that initial kind of feeling of having to fundraise at all. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, it's not turned on. Oops.
Okay, try now.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I should have requested that in advance. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing my screen. Money,
Yes, we're all good.
unfortunately, does not grow on trees as I wish it did. But let's just talk, right off the bat about why funding student travel, especially for student journalists, is so important. We know, of course, that conferences, especially TIPA and TCCJA, can be really transformative experiences for people. There's the exposure aspect. Not only are your students exposed to other student journalists and other skills building and things like that, but they're also exposed to things just experiencing life. I know that for those who attended the Media Fest convention here in Washington, D.C., just a few weeks ago, for some of them, it was the first time on the plane, right? It was the first time leaving and traveling without their family. So you get to see a lot of aha moments, not just with their journalism abilities, but also just in life. And that's something that I think some administrators, or as we're looking at potential funding bases, they forget, right? That those firsts happen when people like you are creating them and making those opportunities. There's also the networking. Ultimately, though, it boils down to confidence. And what we're talking about is confidence for people who are going to go into the workforce. Obviously, we know that travel costs add up very quickly between registration, hotel, transportation, meals. All of that is really important and to think about as you're thinking about the why and pitching people to help with those costs. Having an actual dollar amount in mind can be super helpful when doing any outreach. Obviously, your job as an advisor includes helping students access these opportunities equitably. So when things are really tight, it makes it that much harder when you're having to make really difficult decisions on who gets to have these opportunities. But the good news is that money is out there. You just need to know kind of where and how to look. So before we get into some of the where and the how, I wanted to know kind of what's the first word, and you can do this if you want to add into the chat or if you want to hop on and just say it out loud. What's the first word that comes to mind when you think about asking for money? Dread. You're not alone, Julie. Slimy. Yep. Rejection. Ooh, we'll talk about rejection. These are all good. Begging. Yeah, it does feel like you're going and with your hand out and having to ask for something that you should already have. So I would add frustrating to this list. Lack. Yeah. These are all really good. I hope that by the end of our conversation that you're going to feel those words shift to more inviting, empowering, and connecting, because that's what we're really talking about is building relationships and really leveraging relationships to help bring in dollars that are going to support this important work. Many advisors and journalists, I'm one of them, are uncomfortable asking for money. It does feel very salesy, slimy, kind of like begging, definitely awkward. But the truth is that fundraising isn't begging. It's really offering people a chance to be a part of something meaningful. And if we can kind of take that reframing ourselves, it can be really helpful in making that connection with someone and giving them a chance to invest in your students' success. You're not really asking for yourself, and that's where I think we have to kind of make that shift too. But if you consider yourself an advocate for your students and their growth, it really makes a difference in how that initial like, ugh, ick feels. So it's really clear with budget cuts, increasing travel expenses and more that we can't go to the same funding sources and expect more. In fact, it's much less. So where do we find some new ones? I have this concentric circle here um, because I want us to think about this kind of like how we would if we were sourcing a story, right? We want to think about who the stakeholders are in your students' success and in their travel, creating these opportunities. So that as you're thinking about where to look for funds, it might unlock some different ideas. So who are the stakeholders in your student success? At the middle of it, at the heart of these circles is your student, right? Obviously, they are a huge stakeholder in their success. So who cares? Who cares if your students are successful? Oh no, I lost my chat. Hop on and say it. Who cares if your students are successful?
The parents.
The parents, yes. Parents, of course. Who else? Administrators. Hey, Lori. Administration, other students. Yep. Let's take this out of the initial circle, that immediate circle, and think who at the university cares. We said administrators, but who else? Let's get nitty gritty. Who within the university ecosystem cares about your student success? The board of trustees, yeah. Probably whoever handles graduation rates, right? Like in enrollment, the marketing department, faculty, excellent. And then let's think further out, like outside of the immediate university or campus. I'll say campus, sorry, my mind goes to university, but I also got my start at a 2-year school as a student. So valuable experience. So the career, oh, good, Doug, that's great. The career center. If we think outside of the campus ecosystem and beyond, who else is invested in the success of your students? Employers, yes. Local media outlets, the industry. Let's take that out a little bit more. Student media, alumni for sure. Area businesses, right? They need you and your student media outlet to be successful and well regarded because they advertise. This is how they get business. They employ some of your folks after they leave. If your students don't go into journalism, there are other opportunities. So if we think about all of these different stakeholders in the work that you're doing and the importance of your students' work, we have a lot of potential investors in your students' ability to have these experiential learning opportunities that take place at conferences like TIPA. But how does that really translate to real asks and real money? So let's get into that. Let's ID some potential income sources. So obviously, you know best what money exists on your campus. When I was at UT Arlington, um, as a department, I didn't have a lot of places that I could go to ask for more money. Once it was allocated for the year, it was allocated to the department for the year. But I found out probably about 6 years in that my individual students could apply for student activity fees that existed specifically for travel. um, it was, there was a kind of limited amount that they could apply for. I think it might have been 500 or maybe even $750, but they could individually go and apply to get travel support for student experiential learning opportunities. And so once we unlocked that kind of pot of money, we would encourage individual students to go after those student activity fees. So I'd encourage you to explore what exists not for your department, but what exists for students as it relates to travel funds. Does anybody have that on their campus? Are you aware of that type of pot of money? Good. Okay, good. I know I'm not saying a lot here that's new yet, but I'm glad to know that. So if you kind of extrapolate that out, where might other pots of money exist on your campus? Doug said the Career Center. You might go to your career center on campus and see if there are any opportunities for your individual students to go and apply for funds. Career center, graduation office, and then sometimes the alumni, if you have an alumni association, they may have some opportunities there too. Um, some of you are housed within academic units. At UTA. We were not. We were student affairs. Um, but I want to remind everybody that departments and deans always have discretionary funds at their disposal. It's in their budget, no matter what. It may be a little, it may be more. But I would say that nearly every department head or dean has some kind of discretionary fund that they could use. So I would say, if you're going to approach your dean about discretionary funds or the department head, to think strategically. What message do they need to hear to help you get a student, not all students, to TIPA? Because it's going to be harder for them to say yes to, oh, I need to fund 8 students to go to TIPA, than it is to say, um, my student is up for reporter of the year or editor of the year. They won't be able to go otherwise. Can you help provide some partial funds from your discretionary account? If you appeal to the support of the student experience and not your department, that might help get a foot in the door there. And then, of course, there might be some campus diversity leadership or, again, kind of experiential learning grants that exist on the campus. So maybe not a lot new there, but to think about the um, discretionary money that exists on your campus could be helpful. I want to talk a little bit about alumni and donor networks. If you don't have a formal alumni association, that's actually really good. I will say, based on personal experience, and I'm a far enough away now that I can say this as an alum of my university that I worked at too. Don't count on your alumni association to fundraise on your behalf. They're in it to make their own money and to support their operations. I would say cut out the middleman and create your own alumni list. You already have all the data at your fingertips. But I would strongly suggest that you think about the people who have come through your program as some of your most invested advocates, as well as the people who want to champion the program and make sure it continues. I would say when it comes to TIPA specifically, I was talking to Julie about this when we were in DC together a few weeks ago. Anybody who went to TIPA on your dime or on the school's dime is a potential contributor to your cause right now. Get your list out from the previous years, look at those registration lists, track down emails, and let them know you need help. You can craft different messages for different segments of that list. If somebody went to TIPA and won a boatload of awards and they had such a great experience, they love it, let them love it by giving you $50, right? It doesn't sound like a lot, but I'm telling you, I mean, how many students do you think have come through your doors and gone to TIPA over the last 10 years alone? You've got people who had a good time, who took something away from it. And even if you ask for $20, that can add up to help a student or a group of students go this year. The students who travel for TIPA and these conventions, they have no idea how they got to go. They don't know how it was funded. They don't know any of that. So telling them that you need their help in order to help others will really inspire them. I will tell you right now, if anybody from Del Mar College, the 2-year school I went to, or UT Arlington, where I got my um, undergraduate degree, if anybody came and asked me for money to help them go to TIPA because somebody wouldn't be able to if I didn't, I would hand them a check right away because of how invested I was in that program. Think about those folks who are ambassadors and who will see that as a reinvestment in the program. Um, it can feel icky, of course, to do this, but it's all in the framing and about the relationships that you've maintained with them. Um, so you can also, if we want to recognize too, journalists don't make a lot of money. So let's say that our alumni bases aren't going to be, hopefully they find wealth, but they may not. But we have to also think about, especially with recent graduates, and I would say even folks who are not so recent like myself, still using Facebook, still using some of these platforms. You can encourage those alumni networks, if they don't have the funds to give themselves, to use the platforms that make it really easy to give. Facebook birthday fundraisers are a really great way that individuals can help contribute. They're surprising space to raise money. Um, I would say if you tapped some of your maybe not so recent graduates, that you're going to find a lot of success here. As an example, one of my board members, who every year he puts up a Facebook fundraiser for like, a couple of days around his birthday, and it brings in nearly $1,000 every time. And it's not money I count on because it may not happen from year to year, but he made that choice and now he's an ambassador and bringing in other people's money to help support my organization. So use your alumni network not just for their cash, but their network's ability to invest in this. Again, thinking about ambassadors and relationships, this is what this kind of philanthropy industry is. Um, Another idea is if you can find one alum, I haven't said that word in a while, who can give a larger amount, you can use it as a matching gift campaign, especially when you've got something to rally around, like getting students to TIPA. So by this, I mean, let's say that Michael and I, my husband and I met at the Shorthorn. We want to give back to the Shorthorn. Let's say we wanted to say, okay, we want to donate whatever, $5,000 to help TIPA this year. If I gave that to the Shorthorn now and said, we're going to match, I could just give that to them and call it a day. But instead, we could suggest, Michael and I will match any gift up to $5,000, so that you can double your impact, right? Like your messaging changes to your alumni network to say, oh, well, we have a couple of alumni who have said they're going to um, uh, double. I don't know, like if you give $20, we'll give another 20, whatever the match would be. But if you can kind of figure out what that um, tactic would be, and some might say gimmick, but it really can be a helpful way to encourage and influence others to give when they know other people have been giving too. And also, there's a psychological thing there too, when you know that your gift is going to go further because there's a match involved. Um, is all that kind of clicking or making sense, or decent ideas? Okay, good. Excellent. Um, in order though, so those are just a couple of ideas for tapping your network. But what is going to be really helpful to you, and make it easier to get to a yes with folks, and it doesn't feel as salesy, is if you have student success stories that can help inspire that giving. Please start collecting student testimonials about their current experiences. You could ask them about how getting that big story made them feel about their work and their confidence, that aha moment that they had only because you created it for them. Ask about how they attended a conference, like how it changed their outlook on journalism or life. Get it in writing, get it in video, and get it often so that when you need to go ask for some additional support, you already have kind of a database of work that you can or testimonials that you can use. And again, that may feel a little icky. The way that we kind of worked around this um, we kind of built it into a structure while I was at UTA was when we got back from conferences, everybody had to do a little conference report on some of the sessions they went to. That was really easy to pull from to use as testimonials. We also did an end of year, every semester we did an end of semester survey of the employee experience. And so we were able to use those testimonials as well. So if you kind of build in some infrastructure where you're collecting consistently, you'll be able to turn around and use it when you need it. Let's see. You can use these in social campaigns. If anybody wants to know how much I love Canva, I adore Canva, and I'm happy to do another session just on using Canva. But the other thing I'd say is like anytime you can brag on your students, do it constantly in meetings and visible spaces. You all already do this, but I'm saying that the more that you are an advocate and can spread the message of what people are investing in with a contribution, it can be really helpful. I want to talk a little bit about advertising and sponsorship revenue. Local businesses are always looking to create community goodwill, especially in the highly politicized, highly charged environments that we're all living in right now. So supporting students is kind of a neutral space for them to invest back into the community and get some of that good messaging. And who better to do that with than journalism students who can then tell that story. So I would encourage you to look to local businesses, especially looking at the vendors that you already engage with. So your printer, your distribution models, your website developers and hosting, like you have a bunch of vendors who you're paying and who work for you. So let's see what they might be able to offer you in terms of a contribution to support something very specific and concrete, like a registration or supporting one student going to a conference. Um, if they can't offer you cash, um, can they offer you discounts on the services they provide that then you could take that discount and convert that to cash you can use for travel? Um, the other outside sponsorship type groups you might look at are your local journalism groups, if you have an SPJ chapter or any of the identity-based chapter organization chapters. Often, again, they will have opportunity money for people, but you have to know to ask. So it's good to just tap in and have those relationships where you can check in and say, hey, do you have any discretionary money where you can send us $500 and it'll help us get another student to TIPA. You can also offer logo, you can offer to do some marketing for them on your site as well. The other thing I wanted to share with you, and we were not going to have time to cover grant writing in this session, although I'm happy to talk about that another time. I want to show you, I want to talk about community foundations. Does anybody currently interact with any of your community foundations in your area? No? Okay. Let me pop up actually, it's probably going to be better for me to put this link in the chat because I want you to hold on to it. I'm putting in here a link to a community foundation locator map. So a searchable map to help you find the community foundations that are in your area. These foundations exist to dole out grants and support for mission aligned work, as many foundations do, but they're very hyper local, right? So they're great for you to try to tap into because some of what they're funding, their key areas are around workforce development, which you're clearly doing with with the work in student media. Many of them have education focuses. So you can really look at the community foundation in your area. It's getting a lot of local funding from from family foundations, and those could be really tricky to try to find. So community foundations are a good place to look. They can, depending on the foundation, award anywhere from, a small urgent grant of, $2,500 to a larger kind of sustaining grant that can help you with longer term initiatives. So just wanted to make sure you had that link. If anybody has a difficult time with it, let me know. Um, but it's just a good way to start building relationships with them, and seeing what opportunities may exist. And then going back to the presentation, so sorry, give me one moment. I'm trying to go quickly so we can get to questions. Oh no, come on, Francesco, you can do this. Okay, so just to get back to these ideas here, um, I want to talk about just like student fundraisers. Um, we talked about individual, like maybe finding some opportunities on campus for individual students to apply for university funding, but peer-to-peer student-led fundraising drives. Um, ahead of the holiday season, I know that not everybody has the resources to do this, so I want to acknowledge this right away. But, if students are expecting or anticipating gifts from family or friends, maybe let them know that they want to go to TIPA and that they could, that might be the gift, is that they can help with some kind of travel expenditures. The other way that we have been resourceful in the past when it comes to funding student travel has been to look at like converting, this sounds so bad, but like converting credit card miles to cash, right? Like there's things like that families who may not be able to help support their student going to one of these things, there might be some like workarounds there that you can talk to your student about, maybe looking at. I know these can be difficult conversations, especially about personal finances, but if it comes up, that might be something that you can talk about. Okay, so those are some places you can look. The key here, again, journalists, I think, are the best equipped to be fundraisers because we already are in the business of telling stories. Where we need to kind of get our minds around this is like making the ask. So you always want to lead with impact, just the same way that you would a lead, right? Like when you're writing a lead to a story. What's the point of this? What's at stake? Here, this example, your gift helps a first generation student attend her first national or state journalism conference, right? Like right away, I know this is important and why. Um, just like just like you would in a news story, be specific. Really have an idea of what the true cost of attending is per person. If it's and Julie, I think you worked out the numbers for what it is per person for tip. I know the some of the travel stuff might be different, but do you want to remind us what it would be for TIPA?
Sure. If you were going to have one hotel room that two people share, it's going to be about 775 bucks and then like 10 bucks a contest. So it's doable for 800 bucks to get a room and two students there for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night.
Okay, that's really helpful to know because that is the concrete detail that will help me know how I can best help. If you're asking me, I can say, okay, well, maybe I can't do 800, or maybe I can't do 1,000, but I can do 800, or I can do 5, and that'll help, or I can find somebody who can pair up with me and assist here. But you want to lead with impact, be specific with your details, try to use visuals and testimonials from past conferences. I know everybody's got a ton of photos, and those students are out there taking tons of photos. Ask them to get those to you afterward, because I will say, I was talking with Lori about this earlier, that the number of awards that you bring home is impressive, maybe to the administrators, but for outside folks who are not as familiar with like the landscape of journalism education and journalism student media, the number, like volume, is not as important as the impact on the individual students. They want to see how this is changing lives. Um, and that's where you're going to really make a good impact. You're going to bring that investment home. And then of course you want to tie the ask to the outcomes. Like this is gonna result in internships or jobs or improved coverage of our community. You really want to make sure that you're showing and not just telling the same thing that we tell our students in the classroom. Listen to me saying our students again. I miss it. Can you tell? Okay, so let's transition that into actually asking for support. Again, you want to think like a journalist. Be specific, connect your anecdotes and facts to the lead, and find your unique angle. Um, Specific and time bound. We need to raise this much money by April 15th, or that's way too late, but that's not a good example. But pick your time frame, pick the amount, and be specific. You want to connect to that impact. You're helping to train tomorrow's journalists. You are helping to get a first generation student to their first ever state conference where they're going to showcase their skills and build more. You want to ask often. One of the biggest mistakes that I have made when asking for financial support is thinking that people are not interested. How many emails do you get in a day? Thousands probably, right? Especially with all those students and at midnight, of course, right? But people are busy, they're not uninterested. So it's okay to react, like to reach out again, give things a nudge or a bump, especially for like high value individuals or how high value people you think that really should be and can invest. And you want to personalize every request that you make. It's okay to kind of have some base templates, the same way that we would encourage students to do with like cover letters, but you want to personalize each request, especially when you're working with alumni and then local folks that you have a relationship with. Um, and of course, we get back to what we talked about at the beginning, what you said, that this all feels super icky. So let's talk about the ick. Just a reminder. Okay. People want to make a difference. They always want to make a difference. Even the jerkiest jerks want to make a difference, but they need to be told what the clear path to do that is, right? I'm kicking myself for not better activating our alumni network at the Shorthorn while I was there to help give back and support student scholarships and these types of opportunities. They want to help, they just need a clear path to do it, right? So if you can create that path, it can be really helpful, whether that's for outside vendors, community foundations, whoever you're asking. Remember that you're inviting them to join your mission. You're not going to them with a handout. You're saying, hey, we think that you have, we can show you value, right? Like we have a unique value proposition within this community. This is what we're providing, and you can help us with our mission to help students be stronger, informed, all of those things, whatever the pitch is that you want to make. And again, like I want to ask you to shift thinking about asking about this as cash or money, that you're offering this investment opportunity in the future of journalism, in the future of your community. And that may all feel like very nice and fun. But here's what some of the key components of an ask are. You've got the connection, the impact, and then you have the invitation. You're not starting with that ask. You're saying, what's the connection? Why am I asking you? Why am I writing to you now, right? And it's okay too to not start with, my name is Beth Francesco. I'm the executive director, blah, 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 blah. Just like I start with, you know, as a journalism alum, I thought you'd like to see what we're doing now. Or you've always supported student opportunities. The more you can bust in with that initial like lead that grabs somebody's attention, right? This is what we teach. It's just flipping it around to how can you connect with that person or that group that you're trying to get some funding from, to immediately say like, this is why you should care. Obviously, the impact, we've talked about that already. The show, don't tell. Whatever the amount is that you're asking for, what's it going to help do? Or this trip gives our editors a chance to bring back best practices for their campus newsroom. Like remind people what the impact is. And then of course, the ask. It can be the last thing you do. But if you could be specific with them, can you help us support one student's travel for X number of dollars? Oh, we'd love to partner. Let's talk, right? That's going to help you get those three parts are really going to help you keep your message concise, keep it focused, and it doesn't feel as icky because you're not going with your handout. You're offering this opportunity to say, hey, I back this, I back I back these students going to TIPA. I back these students doing important work in their community. And whether it's $20 or $2,000, it's going to go towards something that's important. Um, okay, so I wanted to, um, here, let me just make sure I can, is it still showing my screen? Yes, my full screen. Don't look at my backdrop. It's a lot, I got a lot of files on my desktop. Okay. Um, okay. So I will say that I prepared these using ChatGPT. I want to be open and honest about that. But I wanted to show you how refining for different audiences could be helpful. And this link, well, hold on, oh no, hold on. I have too many profiles going on. I apologize. Let me get the shared link so I can send it to you now. I don't want you to miss it. In case you want to look on your own screen. Okay, so it's in the chat if you want to open it on your own screen and kind of tool around while I'm going through this. I'm not going to read all of this to you, but I just want to show you some of the specifics that are in here. Your subject line matters. This I asked it to create a sample ask for a local business. This other tab is for a current advertiser. This is for a cold call. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is to business if you want to have a student send it. And then this would be a sample for an an alum if you wanted to send it. So I'm going to start with the one up top and just, you can play around within these. I will also am trying to be mindful of time, but you can see here, this starts with what we were just talking about. Um, we're getting to, the connection. Um, the why, right? Our student journalists have earned the opportunity to attend this convention. This is what it is. The specific, here's how much it costs. Here's the impact using a testimonial. And then here's how we would recognize you if you decide to sponsor us. And then, this is a pretty straightforward one. I would say you have a lot of personalization you can do with something like this. And once you generate one letter, it's pretty easy to go out, or I'm sorry, not easy. It can be efficient to just kind of use this and tailor it to the next group. And you can see here how the ask is a little bit different when you start out, when you're talking about somebody who's a current vendor or an advertiser. Thank you for being a valued supporter of our newspaper. Here's another way that you can have a bigger impact. If you look through that, again, some of these, the cost and the specifics there are not different, and so on. And then when we get to the alumni one, we have a much stronger and more direct message with pay it forward. I don't know that that always works. I think you know your audience best, you know your alumni best. But tailoring that opening line to really make that connection, obviously remind them of the impact and be specific with the ask, and then here's how you can contribute. So I won't spend more time on the samples, but I just want to make sure that you have access to these. And I want to encourage you to, if you're comfortable using it, because fundraising messaging can be unfamiliar when you're getting started, I think it's okay to kind of do some drafting and kind of ideation with using AI tools. But I really want to let you know it is very obvious. You know this from your being in the classroom and all of them. I'm sure that AI fun garbage you get coming in from time to time on story assignments. But I would really encourage you to use this as like a jumping off point and then modify, build your own as you get more confident in that. Okay. Okay, so then we get to the what if they say no. Well, the good news about getting rejected is that we're already used to that because we're journalists and people tell us no all the time. So get over the rejection because you already do in the day-to-day work. Not right now usually means maybe later, especially if you're talking about identifying with somebody or if you're trying to get to work with somebody who you don't, it's a kind of a cold call. So think about how you can use that as a way to build a relationship. It's always good to thank people for considering it and still reach out to let them know how your students are doing. Stay in their kind of line of sight. following up with an update. Just remember that relationships are going to help make this feel less icky and will help you build sustainable fundraising. And then kind of yes or no, whether you get a yes or a no, it's always good to follow up. Share your trip updates, student reflections, thank your donors publicly, social media, student-made videos, newsletters, all of these are like create a very authentic approach to building a relationship. Uh, Share your outcomes, and then really try to build an annual rhythm by letting people know. Like if I know that a fundraiser is going to come up in early November every year for my alma mater, I'm sorry, my alma mater's newspaper, then I'm going to prepare for that, and I'm going to be looking forward to how I can make an impact on those students. And then just a few other tips, and I want to open to questions. Uh, like any muscle, right? We have to create a habit in order for it to get stronger and stronger. So to build fundraising into a habit, these are some of the things that I have done. Staying organized is the, well, I'm going to start with staying organized because that's my favorite. When Julie and I met about fundraising for TIPA, gosh, it feels like a long time ago, and also yesterday. I shared with her some spreadsheets that I use to track potential foundations that I want to approach, how to segment lists, a lot of different things that because it's a primary objective of my job now, I have created a system. So if you're ever interested in talking about how to do that, let me know. But I would say to start, look through and organize your alumni list, look through and organize your vendor list. Think about who those stakeholders are who could invest in your students and these experiential learning opportunities. Borrow, borrow, borrow. This is one of my faves. You as professional adults probably receive a ton of solicitations for donations all the time, right? Raise your hand if you've got them already coming for the annual giving cycles from your alma maters, your local communities, the interests that you have. Those are gold mines for ideas on how to solicit for donations because you know what works and hits with you, and you also know what's trash and immediately goes into the recycle bin, right? So think about how you can get inspiration from the solicitations you're using that you are already getting, and then borrow ideas from them. Notice how the phrasing or the storytelling works or doesn't work. Um, in addition, borrowing also applies to this. There is not a conference or a workshop that happens in Washington, D.C., journalism or otherwise, that I am not looking at who is sponsoring that conference or workshop or whatever it is. When Media Fest was here, I immediately went to the sponsor list and said, who's there and who am I going to tap for the next thing I need? So when I talk about the sponsor list or those organizational lists, build those out because those are organizations that are already investing in journalism and the journalism space, and they can also be helpful to you. And just remember that every big corporation that is in your community has a foundation. I know that in Arlington, Texas, I think the GM uh, plant is still there. They're like one of the biggest employers. GM has a foundation, so why not tap it? Think about the big employers within your area. Who's the family, Julie, in Waco, Magnolia?
Chip and Joanna Gaines.
They have a foundation. Let's go tap it, right? Like they all of these very large organizations and even some of the smaller ones, and those foundations have to kick out money. They're required by law. So try to get on their radar. But the other thing is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Hold on to everything that you're sending out, your outreach, and then tailor it to your audience. And also, if you're doubting whether you should ask a certain person or organization or vendor or whoever business, whoever it might be, just ask. It's better to ask and get a no and start a conversation than to not ask and never know if they would have supported your students' experiential learning, going to TIPA, same thing with advertising or other ways you want to bring in their dollars. Okay, I think, yes, this says it's question time. So I know I went really fast. I hope that this has, got your wheels turning a little bit of ideas, but I'm happy to take any questions and try my best to to offer some solutions.
Would donations be tax exempt?
For the university, okay, because they are coming to the university, they should be.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I've seen a lot of campaigns where it's year end. If you'd
Mhm.
like to, be able to claim tax exemption on your donation, now's the time
Yes.
kind of approach. And
It's a,
especially with TIPA coming up in the spring, this
mhm.
would be a good timing to try to start that fundraising
Yeah.
piece.
That's a very good point, Karen. And it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Um,
you too.
the urgency that you can create by pointing out the end of year tax exemption, or well, the tax exemption, but kind of really focusing on getting donations made by the end of the year. It's a really good tactic. And it can inspire larger gifts because in order for the tax exemption to really be helpful to people, it's usually for a larger gift. So definitely recommend doing that. Check with, I guess this is where there's some differences in how universities and different campuses are set up. So like as a public university, I
Mhm.
believe that it would be tax exempt. If it's a private university, you'll need to check with your um, development office just to make sure that you're not telling somebody something that isn't true.
Yeah, I also like the idea of the fact where it's year end. They basically, it's, hey, you need to act quickly. This
Yep.
isn't something to put on your back burner for, oh yeah, I'll get to this in a couple of weeks, or I'll think about this next month, or something like that. So it also creates that urgency for that purpose too.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So agreed that for the year end, especially the timing is really good to be thinking about this and taking some action. You also can create some of that urgency by saying we're trying to raise this much by this time, right? By this date. Because that you can kind of create some of
Right.
that oomph
But here,
too.
their benefit is also
Yes, there have been people
time
are
attached.
selfish.
Yeah.
We're all
I mean, if you
selfish.
can make it a win-win, why not,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And that's where kind of going back to the idea of a gift match. If you have somebody, I mean, it doesn't have to be $5,000. It can be $500, right? Like anytime you can tell someone if you give 20, it's really 40, then they're going to say, "Oh wow, then I can do that. I can afford that. Like I can forego my coffee for a couple of days." And so anytime you can kind of create that kind of urgency or momentum, it'll be really helpful.
While folks are thinking, I wanted to share a couple of things. Beth, when you and I met quite a while ago to talk about fundraising, I didn't know anything about it. And then I started fundraising for TIPA. And when I realized that businesses, companies have a line item for things like this and for marketing and advertising, then I thought, why not us? If you're going to
Mhm.
give it to somebody, why not? And so one of the first things I worked on doing was telling the TIPA story and why it was valuable and why it's different from anything else. And I actually had Flight Desk, they had a new person come and I had talked to her beforehand about just, and it's hard to define. And it's kind of like TIPA has a special sauce. And she came and she said, I didn't know what you meant, and now I do. So being able to that took away some of the fear of me because I'm like, they're going to give it to somebody, and I really believe in what we're doing. So that took a lot of the nervousness out of it for me.
You are, I mean, when I think about how much every one of you cares about your students, cares about the work they're doing, and providing the campus the independent journalism that it needs to really create a wider student experience. But you are the best advocates for your students, and you will tell their story the best. The same way that Julie just mentioned, caring about TIPA, being an ambassador for TIPA, and just making the ask. So that's the kind of thing that when you're feeling doubt, and just ask because again, you just talking about your work is enough to make anybody say, "Oh yeah, take my money, please." I'm looking at the questions. I see one to me that says, does TIPA have a legacy program for people who would like to donate in their wills? Julie, do you know?
We do not. I saw SPLC send out something not too long ago, which I wasn't really sure how it was received because it's like, by the way, if you're making a will, leave it to us. I think there's a way to do that, but we
Yeah.
have not.
We
It's
have
not a bad.
we have a planned giving program with the Institute, and it's hard to say, hey, guess what? You're all gonna die. Give us your money. Like that, just to be blunt, we will all die and our assets need to go somewhere. It could be a hard conversation. I would say if you're considering that, definitely talk to the development office because they have a plan. The biggest thing, I think the maybe the most efficient way to get started in that area is to go to them and make sure that giving to your student media outlet specifically, not the academic department. Well, it depends on where you're at in your campus, but wherever you want it to go, make sure it's an option on the drop down. Because if it's not, they're just funneling money to the general fund, which is fine, but you want the money to come to your students. So talk to your development office and see if you can make it a direct give to your to the publication or the department that makes the most sense. I'm not trying to be down on alumni associations or development offices, but they have their own agendas, and your agenda is to fund your student media outlet, your student experience. So
But Beth, that is really good information because I wouldn't have thought of that could be a drop down that it would go specifically to our groups.
if anybody ever pushes back on, well, why your department and not others? Your departments are the ones that are serving, well, you're serving your students, but you're also serving the entire campus community. And that's there are very few that are organizations on the campus that are serving everybody on campus. So just remember that, and that could be a helpful little push or nudge toward getting that, what they may say, oh, it's special treatment. It's not. It's just right. I feel so free being able to say this stuff. Any other questions?
Well, Beth, I guess, and this is a little bit different than we've been talking about in terms of, going to corporate fundraising. One of our biggest challenges, we have a position on our campus that has been vacant. And we've requested it filled and filled and filled and filled and filled and filled and filled with every year's budget cycle. So far, unfortunately, no, and I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on grant writing to fill, maybe a 2-year grant that funds that kind of a position. If you have any insights, suggestions on that. I have virtually nil grant writing experience, been to some workshops, and that's about as far as I go. And I'm wondering if you've gone there, and B, what you'd recommend for a first-time effort like that.
Yeah, I think that's where, depending on what the position is, because what grant funders, we're really probably looking at a foundation versus a corporate sponsor.
Right.
In that regard, when you're looking at the position itself, making sure that whatever work or impact that position would have would directly align with the mission of that foundation.
Right.
So if it's a really unique position, that could be beneficial because you might be able to find a foundation that can say, oh, that's really important. If it's a more general position, that might be more interesting to a community foundation that's, interested in creating jobs in the area.
Right.
So I would think about what the role is you're trying to fill, and then try to find a foundation that'll match or like mission align on that. Those are a little bit trickier to fill, and I think you might, I don't want to be discouraging, but I want to be realistic.
Sure.
I do think when it comes to employment on a campus, there are so many different hoops to jump through that you might want to coordinate a little bit. If you've got an advocate in your department, in your department leadership, whatever it might be,
Mhm.
where they can say like, oh yes, if you found this money, then we would fill this job, because otherwise I don't think it's worth the effort you might put into trying to find that funding.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I
Again,
appreciate that.
I don't want to be discouraging, because I think there are more dollars going into funding specific positions,
Mm-hmm.
especially journalism and journalism adjacent right now, than there are to organizations like mine, which are providing training for journalists. But people who are the big journalism funders right now, they're funneling money to local journalism. So there are dollars available, but you want to make sure you're really aligned, and that if you get the money, you're not going to have to go through any red tape to actually get somebody started.
Right. No, it
And
makes a lot of
the
sense.
campus loves red tape. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Anybody
Good
have
question.
any other questions? Well, Beth, I can't thank you enough for taking your time to do this. It is something that we all need to start looking at. And you've just given us a really good roadmap to start this on our campuses.
I'm so excited to have been asked, so thank you. I love TIPA, and I have to just say, like, if nobody has told you lately, and I know that probably nobody has told you lately, thank you for the work that you do. It is so vital. And if it hadn't been for somebody, you probably can think about the person who got you into journalism and got you in this space. But if it hadn't been for somebody just saying like, hey, you should try this, like, hey, you might be a good writer, or hey, you might do this, then I don't know where I'd be today. But I just want to share with you that that I appreciate you. I also want to put in the chat my email address. Stay in touch if you've got specific questions. Again, I'm a little bit removed from the Texas um, um, student media life, and so less familiar with some of the really, it sounds like a lot of stuff that you're having to go through given the environment we're all living in right now. But if I can be of any help, stay in touch. I'm here to support you and your students. So I wish you the best of luck, and I hope that I get to see you at TIPA next year. I think I'm invited.
You were absolutely invited. I'm expecting you to come.
Keep me
And
busy.
everybody else, I will send out the link to this video. I did record it for those who weren't able to join us. And I will also send that breakdown of how much it would cost to send students to TIPA so that you can have numbers to work with. So
Julie, if it's
yeah.
helpful, I will I can send you the link to the presentation and then the
Oh,
samples too.
fabulous. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be great.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Thanks everybody for coming.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.